Guys, thank you for having me here today. It's a bit nervous, I'll be honest. It's the first time I've spoken to an audience in a year and a half. Everything's been virtual. See, I normally train pretty much up in Asia. So I'll tell you a bit about myself and my company. So I work for Pelgar. We're a British-based company, specialise in rodenticides, rodent baits, insects, and we do some military things as well. Is this working? My clicker's not working. Oh, okay, here we go. Thank you, Jane. There you go. So I look after 40 countries in the Asia-Pacific region, so cover from pretty much Afghanistan is my region, spend a bit of time in Lahore, up Kabul, down to Madagascar. So probably 28 of those I'm currently active in, including Sri Lanka, India, etc. So I've got 24 years experience in the industry. I've got a friend at the back with a very familiar uniform who I started my work with in the UK over 20 years ago. And then I got brought to New Zealand to sort of stay for 2 years, ended up being 21 years. So I currently sit on the Executive Council for PMANZ, that's the Pest Management Association of New Zealand. And that's sort of the urban pest side things. So how I came to talk today is we've done work with Sean Bewley at Auckland Zoo with conservation, with the Manumia in Samoa. We donated the bait and the bait stations and other things. So obviously Sean gave the details to Jane for me to come in and talk to you guys about leptospirosis. So yeah, prior to COVID, I spent a lot of my time traveling. Every month I've been in a different country. Mostly in Vietnam, helping with some of the dengue fever issues up there. I currently advise the Ministry of Health on dengue issues now to control, particularly around the hospitals and in the villages. So I've been to some of the most worst places on earth, looking for mosquitoes, rats, mice, you name it, yeah. And only once I've ever got ill, and that was in Indonesia at a military function, and I think it was the fish soup they served me. Mumbai, Delhi, I was fine. It was Indonesia at a military function, go figure. Food for thought. Before I talk about lepto, I was going through my notes of something that we did in 2015, and this slide really emanates with me of the concern when you're looking at rodents, particularly rats. So a study was done where they trapped quite a lot of rats in the UK and then looked to see what was in them and on them, and these are the figures. So bacteria, that's what I'm talking about today, is leptospirosis. That was found in 14% of the rats. Listeria was 11%. Eusinosis, 11%. Pasteurellosis, 6%. Some of these I don't even know what they are. Look, guys, I'm not an expert in zoonotic diseases. I'm not a doctor or PhD, but I'm just trying to be practical today. Viruses, hantavirus in 5%. These are the ones that concern me the most, particularly from an urban pest as well. Fleas were found in 100% of the rats. And those homeowners, if you've got a rat in your roof, it's going to have fleas. Mites, 67%, and the one that really gives me the EBGBs is lice, 38%. So, look, with this presentation, guys, I'm more than happy to make it available to you guys as a PDF or as it is, so you can refer back to this later on. Yeah, so you can have this presentation, and you can use whatever images I've got in here as well yourself for training. More than happy to. So leptospirosis, Reals disease. I was actually quite fortunate. I was talking to some guys earlier on. When I was 18, I decided to take up scuba diving, living in sort of the Rumney Valleys coal mining village. We didn't have much water, so we used to swim in Caerphilly Castle Moat and Pen y Fan Pond. And one day, I wasn't feeling too well. Went to the doctors, and I'd contracted Reals disease. So, course of antibiotics, and 2 weeks later, I came right. But I've actually had it when I was 18 years old. So, what is it? Look, it's an infectious disease. It's transmitted from animals to humans by infected urine. And it can occur through breaks in the skin or mucous membranes of the eyes, nose, and mouth, just by touching yourself, things like this. Mostly cuts, though. So, there's spiral-shaped bacteria called leptospiros. So they multiply in the kidneys of the animals, and then they come out in the urine. You'll see, as we go on, In New Zealand, it's mostly found within the farming industry. It's not common sort of in the pest control industry, but it is coming into that realm now, and I'll show you some evidence as we move forward. So if you can see that too well, there's some great resources out there which I'm going to share with you. So this basically shows the vectors. The wetter the environment, the more of the risk the disease is going to be transmitted. So the reservoir hosts, these are the things that are going to carry it. You've got your mouse and a rat, you've got possums, hedgehogs. I think 20% of hedgehogs out there were carrying lepto at one stage. Rabbit, deer, goat and pig. And then as you can see, basically a lot of the dairy farmers, particularly when they're dealing with cow's urine, things like that, splashes. So you'll have this in the presentation I'll give to you. Look, going a bit left field here. When I got asked to talk about lepto, I thought, let's talk about why we need to be aware of it. So I'm going to give sort of a bit of a biology lesson. Some of you might already know this, but it's a good refresher. So rats currently see at 2600. They view the world like us, but with color blindness. So they can see into the ultraviolet, and this is basically what they see. So their eyesight is not that good. So how do they communicate? So 1% of the genetic code is used for smell. That's a lot, a very lot. So when air is drawn in, the odors are trapped. Then signals are sent to nodules in the forebrain. So each nodule pertains to a specific group of smells, and that's what the graph looks like. Why is this important? They've got a second organ that's involved with smell. You're probably thinking, where's he going with this? So it takes its cues from pheromones trapped in non-volatile matter, and this is the important one, urine. So why are they urinating everywhere? It's, yeah, they want to go, but also they're sending messages to other rats. And within that urine, they will basically mark such as the sex, if it's male or female, reproductive status, sexual maturity, familiar or unfamiliar animals from their own sort of colony, for want of a better word, social status, individual recognition, and this is the most important one, particularly for me with urban pest, is stress level. You know, people say to me, why can't we have a bait that kills them instantly? And it's like, great. You know, we obviously produce chronic rodenticides that take time to kill them, because what happens, a rat then would eat the rodent bait. It would basically eat it over 3-4 days, not start to feel well. In its urine would tell the other rats, this food is good, I'm feeling okay. By the time the rat dies, it doesn't know what it ate to kill it. But if you did an acute one, as soon as a rat eats it, I'm not feeling well, he will let that known then within his urine, and therefore put him under stress, and the rest of the colony won't eat it. So urine is important because it carries lepto. Right, I think Ben might have seen, some of you might have seen this video before. Up until COVID, which I'm really disappointed with, we had Church Farm in the UK. So it was the training facility where every single Rentokil pest control service technician in the UK would get trained. And we trained people on rodent behaviour. We had 250 black rats there. We had about 120, so 250 brown rats, we had black rats, we had mice, we had cockroaches, we had scenario room set up. And as a result, these were probably the best looked after rats in the UK. We weren't allowed to kill them, so we just observed behaviour, which means we could get to play with them. And they were wild. They would have a go at you. So I went into one of the pens to have a look, and I couldn't see the rats. So hopefully this will work. So that's the guy in there, if you can see at the back. That was fantastic. And you could observe behavior really well. I spent about 4 hours in the pens with them, and really what I didn't know is obviously they used ultrasonic, so we had an ultrasonic meter, and you could pick up the rats chattering to each other and find out where the babies were. It was absolutely fantastic. But we got to play a lot with urine to see behaviors, and I've got some other stuff to show you now. So that there is just a normal pipe. Then we took a black light to see if obviously the urine would fluoresce under a black light. In dark environments, yes. In very light environments, it's hard to see, but that's what the urine looked like when we put a black light on it. So So that was quite interesting. To the naked eye, you wouldn't see it, but then put it under black light, we could see it. So we did a press release in March, basically what we've seen globally, not just in New Zealand, in Australia, I'll come on to that later, in Asia, in the UK, is we've seen a huge increase in, obviously, rodent activity, hugely. Then I wrote an article in June 2019 predicting this, most plagues in Australia in 2021. Here we are. So that's, for us, we're seeing the increase in, obviously, vermin, rodents, things like that. All right, some of you might have seen this one before. I'm fortunate, when I travel quite a bit, and do you ever pick this up a couple of years ago? So this is Raj's Banana Leaf KL restaurant. So that's street water, and you've got workers basically at the back washing the dishes in the road with dirty water and then serving the food to the customers. So that's fantastic. Oh, you love that. Gets better. This is one of mine. This was taken at a food court in KL. I've actually got stories from Singapore, believe it or not, that are probably as bad as this. So this is basically, that's noodles. So that's dried, that's cabbage that's sitting on there, and what they're doing, they're getting the noodles out of the bucket. So look, when I've got this, obviously this presentation, you can have these videos to show, they're great. And they're big rats, and then obviously the male rat comes in, all the family comes in. Fantastic. And that's a food court. That's me sat there watching them. Fair to say I didn't eat noodles there. So, onto the lepto. Doing my research, this was from basically this month. This is May the 13th. So what Queensland now, they've got 78 cases of leptospirosis this year. They're starting to see an increase due to the plagues. Currently, at the moment, we are going through a significant amount of bait in Australia. We supply, obviously, bait into Australia, and it's the bane of my life. It's just so stressful over there as trying to get bait into the country. So for us, we believe it's going to continue possibly through to September, even to the end of the year. So the fact they've got the mouse plague is not a good thing. So WorkSafe, our friends at WorkSafe. This is interesting. They've got some great resources out there. So as I said, I don't know everything about lepto, but a lot of people do, and I've got some really good resources that I'll share with you. So leptospirosis in WorkSafe's eyes remains the most common occupational infectious disease in New Zealand at the moment. That's as it stands. So yes, mostly affects the farmers and not so much us as pest controllers, but it's something we need to be aware of. So they've got a really, really good guide on their website. It's Prevention and Control of Lepto. There's some really good information in there. Some of the information I'll tell you today has been taken from the WorkSafe guide, which makes it nice and simple. So that's what it looks like. It's a PDF, and you can have a look at it. It's available. The other one as well is we've been given permission when I spoke to them about actually I was coming here today, and we can use, or you guys can use, any of the resources needed from that website, leptospirosis.org.nz. It's been written by some really good people from Massey University. There's a lot of information on there. A lot of it relates to the farming community, but quite a bit of it relates to pest control as well. So all the technical PhD information you want that I haven't got is going to be there for you. Right, so symptoms. I had quite a few of those actually when I was 18. No, she was lepto though. So the first thing I noticed, you get a really bad headache and a high fever. I started to have a rash. It wasn't so much on my arms, it was sort of mostly on my shoulders. You get a bit of pain. The diarrhea is not too good. I didn't get the red eyes. I didn't get the vomiting, but get a bit of joint pain, and I was starting to turn jaundice a bit, which sort of wasn't good, a bit yellowy, and then you just feel a bit cold. So it's just something, we'll talk about the do's and don'ts, but if you start to get symptoms like that and you go to the doctor, then please tell the doctor, look, you're in pest control. I've been trekking traps, I've been out in the bush. It could be this. It might not be. They can do a blood test, or they can give you antibiotics quite quickly. Look, if exposure is known or suspected, try and dry the area out quite quickly. So the drier the trap, technically the safer you are. The wetter the trap, the more at risk you're going to be. And then wash the area. So wash out any fresh oil cuts with water and disinfectant and dry well. If you suspect you've touched your mouth or rubbed your eyes, flush your mouth and eyes and expose skin with running water. And wash your hands and face well, dry thoroughly. And record what's happened, the date, the time, when it happened. Ironically, prior to, I was due to give this talk, over a year ago, before COVID. And one of the big things is wash and sterilize your hands. And now we've been doing it for sort of a year. We're sort of used to carrying hand sanitizer. And see a doctor within 24 hours if you start to get symptoms. Don't wait 2-3 days. The longer you wait, the harder it's going to be. Prevention strategy is pretty simple, pretty easy. It's common sense, a lot of it. Just be cautious with all animal urine exposure. Just be aware of it. The concern I see, when I see people doing bait stations and traps is they don't wear gloves, things like that. Or you see little children doing their things in the back garden. It's just aware that these animals, mice, rats, they will carry some diseases. Just be aware of it. And if you've got a cat, common sense, put a waterproof dressing on and any scratches. Wash your hands frequently. The nitrile gloves that I currently wear, which are over there, which are quite thick and quite well, they work really well with hand sanitizer. They don't break down, so I keep sanitizing the gloves as I'm working. And yeah, use PPE gloves. So if you've got eczema or you've got any open wounds, I'd probably avoid working in some of the high-risk areas. Particularly where you're at risk of picking it up, and carry hand sanitizer. Now, I'll put it out there. We currently supply all the hand sanitizer to the New Zealand Defence Force. We produce it. It's actually made in Auckland. If any of you community groups need hand sanitizer, I'm happy to donate some. I've got a warehouse full that is sitting there in Auckland. So if you want any, let me know. More than happy to donate some. Admittedly, it's not the little ones you can carry, it's the 500ml bottles. Now, sort of coming toward the end of the presentation, there's something that I'm not sure if Rentokil carries them now, but I used to carry them when I was in the UK. And it's something that, thinking about as from a PMAN's point of view and from Palgar's point of view, I'm quite happy to produce these and give them to the community groups at no charge. So what it was a little card that you keep on you that basically gives you some advice, and also for a doctor. We used to carry them as technicians, because if we went to the doctors and I've got flu-like symptoms, I've got a rash, doctor says, oh, you'll be fine, have some Panadol, you'll be okay. But if I told him I was in pest control, then I'm treated differently and possibly with a course of antibiotics. So as a group, if you think that's something that you would find quite useful, I'm quite happy to get these made for you, and then you could use them yourselves, okay? So there's something which we're finally coming to the end of my presentation. We've got a conference in August. It's in Auckland. So it's the Pest Management Association New Zealand. You're more than welcome, all of you, to have a look at that if you want to come along. It's over a couple of days. You can pick which days you'd want to come on. So you focus on clean green. We're talking about Predator-Free 2050. Technology and pest control. We've got Boffin-Miskell coming along talking about their PAWS project. Helen Blackie and Lee Shapiro is going to be there, and quite a few other people. Changes in legislation, the fun we're going to have with Bidefficum and what's going to happen around that, and how the EPA changing things. Some of those might not be relevant to you, like the Food Act, but it's always good to know. Pesticide calibration, that's if you're going to go spraying, and cockroaches, and then we're launching a new UPM course. So yeah, I'm finishing up now, guys, but happy to take questions, and then at the break, come and talk to me. Yeah, doing coffee time. Thank you.
it's correct to say that Lyme's disease is not in New Zealand, is that right?
No, I haven't come across Lyme's disease. I've come across it in the UK.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've come across Lyme's in the UK quite a bit. I've come across it in Korea and in Thailand, but not in New Zealand.
This year we're getting more rats on our street. We have bush across the road and we're on the edge of the city more or less, but semi-rural. So one person this year has caught 26 rats in their roof already. I've been trapping for years. We've had one family with 4 babies. We got that lot. Our neighbour is catching ship rats. Our ones are normally Norway rats. Do Norway rats and ship rats drink tea, i.e. breed, or?
They do coexist, and it's a really worrying trend I've seen. And obviously, Guy Renticle at the back would probably back this up. Is both Ecolab and Rentokil are reporting an increase in black rats. Not so much, not just in sort of urban as in residential. We're now seeing it major food producers. The trouble you're having with those is they sort of live up in the gantries. They will not come down for food,
That's right.
and you've got to try and get them up there. And it's becoming an absolute nightmare. So when as an industry, you have a black rat problem, and you think, here we go. We've tried, things I've tried that's worked really well. Probably one of the best ones I've ever used is dried mango.
So when you say black rat, is that the ship rat?
Ship rat, yeah,
Okay.
Rattus, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay.
So what's behind the Queensland mouse boom? It suggests an ecology out of balance.
It's
I don't know.
a mixture of both. Is we used to see it sort of it come in waves. We used to forecast it, and what happened? They had a drought. Then they had a really good grain season. So all the farmers put as much grain as possible to get feed for the animals as well for the next season. So what happens is we used to see it where it peak where the farmers would harvest the grain in the fields, all the loose grain would fall to the ground, then the mice would come in and feed. They then feed, multiply, there's no grain left in the field. Then the farmers, being farmers, they store their grain for quite some time until the grain prices go high, and therefore they can sell to make more profit. So of course all the silos are full of grain. The mice then hit the grain silos, they then breed, and then once that's been hit, they start to move into urban environments. What we're seeing now is it's in New South Wales, it's now coming into Victoria, and it's starting to come down into SA, which is a bit of a worry because the government is saying we'll put 50 million for rodent bait. We're one of the largest rodent bait manufacturers in the world. We can't keep up with demand. We had a container arrive in pretty much a couple of weeks ago. It sold within 1 hour, and it's a 40-foot container of bait. We're going through so much, we can't keep up. They talk about, government said, we'll double the bait. We'll give double strength bromadiolone. Yeah, great, okay. They'll still kill the mice in 3 to 5 days, but you're going to give the mice a hot dose. So a cat or a native species will pick it up, will end up killing them. So yeah, it's pretty bad over there.
Is there any connection between that mice could carry what you're talking about?
Yeah. They come across both. The issue we've got with mice is mice basically, with rats, they'll just urinate markers, they'll urinate, to, as I say, sort of when they're in the traps and they're stressed or whatever. Mice, though, will urinate constantly. As they're walking around, they'll just urinate all the time. So you're probably more of a risk to come across mice urine than you would be rat urine in an urban pest environment. Okay, thank you, Jane.
And thank you.